Can everyone hear me? Yes, I think you can. Hi, everyone. So I think it's my privilege and to moderate this panel with Haley and Chris and Jonah and Sujay here talking about, how can we heard this question today as well, that we want to send more emails. Okay, but to do that, we also need to get more subscribers to send it to. So how do we do acquisition? How do we get more email subscribers to send emails to and grow that top of the funnel email list and not just send an email to anybody who has a pulse, right? You want to send email to quality lists, not just quantity, because we all know that quantity game, yes, it's needed sometimes to show executives and we all have to do it, but that's not the way to really go about doing it. So the objective of this panel is for us to be able to talk about, as brand marketers, how do we look at acquisition and how do we work with the different partners and vendors, because we have to justify those decisions when we pick a partner to work with, and they all seem very similar. They all come to the table with the same portfolio, and then we have to say, okay, why did we pick one over the other? What kind of questions can we ask? And then also get insights from them, because they have been doing it for a while, to say, what is the best way for us to do this? So it's more of a discussion in saying, how do we vet the partners, what to ask, and then go from there. So the way we are going to do this panel is really easy. We have no slides to show. With introductions, talk about who we are, briefly about what we do, what each of your companies do, and then get into some question and answer. And then we are going to leave some room for Q&A at the very end. And if you have more Q&A after that and you want to get into more details, we will be doing a roundtable as well to get into more operational process kind of questions that you may not have had time to ask. So did I cover everything? Awesome. All right.
I think I was just going to throw in there that a short version of what Shilpi was saying is that we're here to grill these guys. So I hope they're maybe a little bit nervous. Yeah. We'll see. We'll see at the end. Yeah.
The hot seat. Awesome. Haley, you want to start off?
Sure. So I'm Haley Squire. I work for Domino Magazine. I am the email marketing manager there, which kind of speaks for itself. I oversee the entire email channel from building and scheduling to acquisition to data and analytics. A little bit about Domino. Used to be owned by Condé Nast way before my time. It was one of the first brands they ever sold. We kind of relaunched in 2014, and we built, in addition to our quarterly print magazine that we still do, we built a website, an app, and an e-commerce business.
Hi, I'm Shilpi Talwar, and this is my second year at EIS, and I have experience doing B2C and B2B marketing all the way from acquisition to lead nurture, CRM and loyalty programs, and email marketing, and also a lot of non-email marketing, but digital marketing, like SEO, SEM, social, everything that kind of goes into defining that customer experience, all the way from acquiring the customer to making them a loyalty member. That's my experience.
Sujay Javeri, I'm the CEO of Flatiron Media. We have two main businesses. Our first one is we've been in the business of building large-scale B2C email lists designed to receive content from our various lifestyle brands. We've been doing that for a decade, and we have the war wounds of trying to basically fight that battle of trying to find how to build real scale at the same time as maintaining quality. And that led to our second business, which is we are using all of that experience that we've built over the years to also now help our clients build consumer databases of highly engaged users. And so our basic premise is that we want to satisfy that need of trying to build scale for marketers without sacrificing quality.
Jonah Lovins with Fluent, VP of Strategic Partnerships. My role at the company, I help to sort of maximize and grow our client as well as vendor side relationships. For those of you who are not familiar with Fluent, we are a people-based marketing company. We enable brands and direct marketers to go out and acquire new customers at massive scale.
Great, thanks. And And I'm Chris Maron, and depending where you look, here or there or elsewhere, you might be confused as where I'm from. My company is Marketing Democracy, and we help marketers in vendor selection, but I'm also working very, very closely with Certain Source, and Lori Clora, who is going to be presenting on Monday at the coffee break. So I'm wearing my Certain Source hat at this conference, so I'll be using we, not they, as I discuss it. Certain Source, and I got engaged with them, and I'll say this very briefly, in my RFP management business. ESPs were always asking me, during requirements gathering, we need an acquisition solution as well. As we all know, ESPs tend to shun that. In fact, Spencer Colas, if we'd been holding this 5 years ago when he was attending, he would have swooned and passed out that acquisition was even being discussed, because the ESPs traditionally, again, don't like new random source emails coming into their CRM databases. Long story short, I'd looked into various options for my clients, and Certain Source seemed like a very viable one, and for the past 2 years, I've been working extremely closely with the management team there.
Thank you. So let's get into some questions here that we always need to ask is, I think the first question that is so basic, but I think it has a lot of depth in it, is how do you acquire the email addresses that you go out and then give to your brand marketers? Like, what does your database consist of? And how do you acquire it? And how do you maintain it in terms of cleansing it? So lots of questions in there, and you can either take it all at once or you can take it in pieces, and whoever wants to go first.
Okay. So we spend a lot of money on marketing, driving consumers to our sites to exchange value for them providing us information, and then we're presenting all of the marketers' offers to those users. Now, that happens a lot. There are a lot of people doing that. But I think one of the important relevant points is what Shilpi was referring to, which is the quality side of it. You can acquire a ton of data out there, but a lot of it is actually not that great. And so what we've done is basically built a proprietary technology called Pathfinder that utilizes both first-party and third-party data to cleanse the data before we send it to advertisers. It's everything that's from the basic stuff, like does the email address exist, to more important relevant data is what's the propensity of this email address to actually open and engage, and also combine the first-party data from our other business, which is our email business, to say, hey, look, we've seen this email address before, there's a level of engagement this person shows. And so through that process, we're able to try to satisfy that desire of delivering quality at scale. I think that's going to be a repeat theme here is how do you do quality at scale? And so that hygiene process for us is a multi-tiered process that gets us to better quality leads.
Thanks. And so at Fluent, we also have an own media network where we're going out and driving paid media, into our sites. We see somewhere between 5 and 6 million visitors come through our platform each and every day. Of those, about 1 million will come through and actually register. We have a pretty unique process in the way that we sort of engage the consumers and really ask them about themselves. We want to understand who they are, what their lifestyle tendencies are, what sort of products they engage with and market, to really create a robust profile and understand what sort of things this consumer might be interested in and what sort of things we should really be marketing to them. Like Sujay, we've sort of created our own secret sauce, if you will, of using proprietary tools in order to measure the quality, so to speak, of an email address, the likelihood for that user to engage in an email, to click, to open, ultimately to purchase, or whatever the desirable action might be. And we combine that with some third-party tools. Our primary third-party data validation sources are companies like Tower Data and Bright Verify. But we've also explored other projects with a number of other companies to really help us make that data profile on each and every user a bit more robust, so that we can deliver the best quality email addresses to our partners. So, yeah.
Sorry. Certain Sources is very, very unique, I think, in this space in a number of ways. Number one, we don't own any media properties. We don't drive people to our own sites. We are completely media agnostic, and where we place our media is totally dependent upon what makes best sense for the client. The second big difference with Certain Sources is we only get true email opt-in, meaning we don't sell an email to a customer that has not been sourced in any way other than that person, that subscriber, literally typing their email address into a form before, again, it goes to the client. Between that point of typing that email address into a form and arriving at the client, to the point of the vetting and cleansing, we run them through our list builder platform, and where we do several things. We bounce them against 2 third-party partners. One of them, Webula. Vince is here. Great job, Webula. And Forensic, nice shout out. And we bounce them against our clients' suppression list as well as their house list and against our own list, so that only the emails that get through that process then are possibly going to be sold to a client, because the last thing we do is we send a welcome stream of emails where we eliminate those who subscribe but then complain, or there's an inexplicable hard bounce, or there's a spam complaint. So by the time that email gets into our client's CRM database, it has been cleansed almost as thoroughly as it can possibly be. And the last thing that we do is we take the open and click data that we get when we're sending that welcome email stream and optimize that going forward, so that we go back to those sources that provide us the highest propensity of subscribers who do open and click the welcome stream, so that we're constantly, month by month by month, the quality of the engagement of the subscribers we're selling our clients continues to improve.
And Chris, I think you hit on a really important point there, that sort of the way the question was phrased initially. How do you build your database? How is your database structured? That really it's with Fluent, it's a sort of transactional nature where we are sort of engaging with the consumer in a one-on-one, real-time interaction in order to sort of gain that opt-in and get them to subscribe to an email list. And I think that that's not to say that there's not value in the database, and really the size of the database enables us to look back and create sort of really interesting modeling against hey, we've seen this user come through before. Previously 6 months ago they might have been interested in X, Y, and Z. Today they're interested in A, B, and C. What more can I sort of learn about that consumer in order to really make sure that we're delivering that high quality lead to our buyers?
Yep. Cool. Awesome. So I guess, unless you had something else to say there. No. Okay, moving on a little bit. In order to kind of determine if an email acquisition program is successful, what would be kind of your perfect engagement model for the client? So speed bumps, best practices, how do analytics and profiling or how are they incorporated into this? Anything like that.
I'll take that. I think that one of the keys when you're doing email acquisition as a marketer, one of the key questions you have to ask yourself is your goal to buy email addresses, or is your goal to get highly valued new subscribers in your database? Because the way you approach those two things and the way you measure those two things are extremely different. If you're looking for tonnage, just simply how many email addresses can I get, then you're going to go for a low-cost solution. And then you're going to inherit a whole bunch of risk in doing so, but you're going to get that tonnage. If you're looking for actual email subscribers who do what you want, then your next question is, what is it you want them to do? Is it purely an engagement play? And then you need to be able to measure that engagement, which again we do through the List Builder platform. Is it a lifetime value play? And we can also do that with our customers. They are able to measure lifetime value because all transactions are tied back to the source of that email subscriber, so that we can do a secondary optimization against which sources are sending those email subscribers. Not the email address itself. I mean, again, the address is attached, but it's the email subscriber. And if you're buying email subscribers, the way you measure the cost of that subscriber is not what you pay for the email address, but what you pay for the desired action. And by that I mean, if engagement is what you're looking for, how much does it cost you to actually get a new email address into your database that opens and clicks? Because it's not going to be every single one. Not even going to be near every single one is going to open and click. And how much are you going to pay to get one in who's going to transact and then transact again? Because again, it's not going to be 100% of them. So, again, measuring the success of your program really takes gathering the data, deciding again, is it only engagement? Is it lifetime value? Is it both? And what am I actually paying to get that desired behavior by those new subscribers?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's clear in all of the programs. For all of us, the engagement we're having with the advertiser is one where we want to know, okay, what are your KPIs on the back end? What are you looking for? And, you know, in terms of the question about what type of advertiser and what type of relationship do we want with them, is we want an advertiser that has a clear understanding of what those KPIs are, whether they're just based on engagement or a lifetime value or a transaction at the end of the day. And that's sort of part A. Part B is we want that advertiser to have the willingness to share that information back to us so that we can mine the data, so that we can see where the good name's coming from, what sources are driving the better quality traffic, what type of demographics work, is there geo-targeting that should be done, are there other sort of survey-based data that show they have a higher proclivity to engage. So I think that interaction, that back and forth with an advertiser is crucial. I think the other thing that needs to be in place on the advertiser side is, look, both us and the advertiser want to maximize the value of that email program. It's good for us and it's good for them as well. But there are some infrastructure elements of that that need to be in place. Now, deliverability is not something that we talk about a whole lot here. But at the same time, I will tell you the number of conversations we've had with advertisers where either they have a delivery problem, or more often than not, we're actually the ones telling them that they have a delivery problem. We get the data from the back end and we see, oh, you know what, open rates on Gmail are incredibly low, but everywhere else is pretty good. You have a Gmail delivery problem. And so we started seeing that more and more with a lot of different advertisers. And we have 10 plus years of experience in that channel in terms of inboxing. And so what we've done is in those relationships where we have that dialogue back and forth, we provide consulting services to help them with the delivery side. Because if the deliverability issue can be solved, the program becomes much more successful. All of that extra inboxing goes straight to the bottom line. And there's a better partnership for us going forward. And so I think that understanding of how ESPs have set up your email stream, how Gmail is looking at your reputation, how all of that plays is an important part of the relationship that we have with the client.
So, Sujay, so when you're engaging with the advertiser, what are the teams that you mostly engage with? And what are the teams that need to come to the table from the word get-go? Versus you find out 3 months later that this team should have been part of this conversation, and now you have to redo the whole program all over again because the decision makers or the influencers just weren't there. So can you speak?
Yeah, it's different in different situations. You know, I think with certain advertisers, we're working with the agency. There may be a creative agency involved, or we're working direct with the advertiser. But what we try to do is, at the very beginning of the program, even at the very, very beginning, it says, okay, how are we going to have data exchange back and forth once we launch this? We're going to launch a test phase of this campaign, and how fast can you get us data back? And so we normally know very quickly whether or not there's a problem. We may sign a 6-month deal with someone, but within 2 weeks, we're able to basically say, hey, let's sort of take a look at this. You may have some delivery problems in A, B, and C with those domains. We then have the question of, okay, what change can be effectuated by the advertiser? Who do they have to talk to? Who do they have to, the buy-in that they have to get it from? And that can also get complicated because, you know, a lot of times you're faced with sort of the executive team wants to say, hey, I've got a 10 million name list, but as people were talking about earlier, maybe only 2 million of those engage. And if you really want to get inboxing for a lot of these domains, you really have to send to that engaged list and not to the rest. And so you have to do a lot of education and a lot of discussion to sort of say, hey, let us help you with how you manage your email business. Let us give you advice on how you should think about the frequency and cadence of your mail as well as who you're sending to. And so to the extent the advertiser can get the right people involved, that's a win for us. But we do offer that as part of our relationship because I think there are still a lot of people out there who are doing themselves a disservice by not understanding the full health of their email program at this point.
By the way, if any of you have any follow-up questions that may occur to you as investors are talking about what they're offering and differentiating among them, please shoot your hand up and ask a question as it occurs to you. We definitely want you guys to be involved in interviewing people.
I think, Shilpi, your question really drove to an important point, which is, you know, the need to understand a client's business a bit beyond just the email marketing program. And so what we've found is that, you know, in a number of instances, email address alone is not necessarily enough to satisfy the marketing needs or the KPIs that a certain team might have. And so actually a really great case study is one where, Shilpi, in your previous position at Shop at Home, Fluent did a really interesting project where Shop at Home, you know, owned by the Belcaro Group, they're really able to extract maximum value from the consumer once they've installed their toolbar onto their browser. And so we launched a really interesting program that leveraged the flexibility of Fluent's media platform in order to not only drive those installs, but then also pair that with an email address that went directly into the ESP, which really enabled a much more robust program with multiple touch points. And I think that that's really something that we strive for, and how I would describe our ideal engagement with a consumer, or sorry, with a new client, is to really understand what are your marketing objectives, what are the desired actions that the business is trying to drive, and how can we help you customize a solution that will ultimately arrive there.
It's a very interesting question on who we deal with in the acquisition business, because most companies think about acquisition as meaning a customer come to the site or the store, transact, and is gone, and spends an enormous amount of dollars on their acquisition team driving that kind of traffic, where there might be an email address collected somewhere at during the checkout, maybe not. But they're not thinking, that team, if you're an email marketer, that team is not thinking about your email database. And the fact is that your email database, if you're not adding new subscribers at about 30%, if you at the beginning of the year, if you don't add 30% more subscribers to that database over the course of the year, you're going to be down 30% at the end of the year. You simply cannot ignore an email acquisition program and let the acquisition team handle that. Of course, email acquisition, at some point, the idea of getting a new subscriber is that they become a customer. But you're looking for an email acquisition, adding email addresses to your CRM database is with the intention of either you're going to get them to buy again and again. And again, the acquisition team is not thinking about that for you. They're not even thinking about you. They're thinking about site traffic, new customers, driving transactions, and maybe an email address will result. So you need to at least be working with your acquisition team to make sure they're thinking about the health of your email database and the size of your email database. And if they're not, you need to be getting budget for your own program. Because again, if you're doing nothing, your database is shrinking. It's absolutely shrinking.
So to me, it sounds like, email acquisition years ago was just get me an email address. Now I think the mindset has changed, where it's more like not just an email address, but an email subscriber. So you're seeing a convergence of deliverability, ESP providers, cleansing of database and all of that coming together. So when we are going through, I know this, that, when I am talking to acquisition partners, it's a really hard conversation to have to say, I want like 2 million emails, but I'm only going to test and see who are the most engaged ones and only send emails to 200,000 of those. So the others that I bought really have no value to it. That's a tough sell even today, to tell people your email current database or new database that you're adding to it is not really driving a lot of value. So can you talk a little bit in terms of that relationship that you have, which is with ESP providers, other cleansing data providers and things like that, and how do you bring that all together for the client so the client is not talking to 3 different people at the same time? How does that model work, or is it working?
Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead. No, I was last. You go.
I think that's part and parcel of the service we're providing to the best degree that it's currently possible, which is that we're sort of the center point of trying to consolidate the quality and quantity of those names coming through. We know that it's no use for us to send someone 1 million leads and have 50,000 of them engage. That doesn't help the client at all. It doesn't help anyone in any manner. So we're the consolidator of all the hygiene products, of all of the processes and the education that we have and the learnings we have to say, okay, we have all these consumers coming in the door, but there's only a small portion of them that are actually going to be the right target consumers for this advertiser. And so I think that our desire is to say, hey, we still want to bring scale, but we're not going to bring you as much scale as we could because a lot of those guys may not be likely to engage with you. And that's why sort of the feedback back and forth with the advertiser, that sharing of data and just constant refinement of that process and the optimization is what really then allows us to pinpoint the right type of user and really build that scale and not end up in a situation where, you're only sending a small fraction of the list you've acquired. I mean, no matter what list you acquired, even if you have an organic list, there are still going to be, people who don't engage with your product. But you need to understand, you need to have a realistic view of what that's going to look like for these acquisition programs to work.
Yeah. And I think, oftentimes we can really allow the performance of a campaign to sort of answer that question for us. And what I mean by that is, let's say we're engaging with a new client and they're looking to onboard 1 million new email addresses, over the course of the next year. Right? Your gut instinct might be, okay, great, let me generate those 1 million email addresses as quickly as I can. But instead, if we're able to sort of provide the right cadence, take things slow, maybe it's the first month, let's start with 100,000 or 50,000, and let's, sort of let that cool down for a 3 to 4 week period, get that data back like Sujay was talking about, be able to sort of get the right metrics back, get the right flow of information coming back into us so that we can, go and look back and say, okay, of the 100,000 names we were able to sort of generate here, what were some of the commonalities of the top performers? What were the commonalities of those who quickly disengaged from the program, and really use that to refine the second round of testing. And so maybe the second time around, we'll sort of tweak our profiling, we'll tweak the way that we're targeting the campaign to really, make sure that we're focusing in on those types of users who have a higher propensity to really engage and provide value over the long term, so that the second 200,000 or 300,000 email addresses we bring on are already informed by that initial test. And so creating that proper cadence and that proper feedback loop really allows us to craft the best possible program for the client.
I think, email acquisition in many ways is treated like to paraphrase Forrest Gump, email acquisition is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And that shouldn't be, that shouldn't be acceptable when you're doing an email acquisition program. You don't want to wait until Gmail is bulk foldering you to say, we're not doing something right. And risky email acquisition tactics, it's not a question of if that's going to impact your inbox placement. It's a question of when it's going to impact your inbox placement. So the whole idea is to prevent, I thought of another way. We all agree that an unengaged subscriber, we got to do list hygiene at some point and get them out, whatever cycle that is, because ISPs don't like you sending an unengaged. So you think about, on one end, you're taking unengaged subscribers out of your database. On the other hand, you're blithely adding thousands of unengaged subscribers to your database. And if there was a way you didn't have to do that, or you could minimize that, wouldn't you do that? So the point is, again, I admire what these guys do and testing, looking after the fact. But if you could say, I'm going to minimize that up front, and every single month, because I'm going to be optimizing back to the source of those subscribers I'm selling them, I'm going to be upping that engagement number out of the gate. Wouldn't you want to do that? Again, why would you pay for something in 6, 9, 12 months you're going to just dump out of your platform? And again, nobody can say 100% of the people they give you're never going to have to dump them. Nobody can make that claim. But wouldn't you want to minimize that out of the gate?
I think you do want to minimize that. I think absolutely everyone's desire is that every email address that comes in the door is one that's going to engage. But the challenge is the initial thing we discussed, which is how do you do that at scale? And, for better or worse, there are channels of distribution that allow you to get massive scale. And it's incumbent on people like Jonah and myself to have businesses that clean that and have good hygiene to basically provide the best quality users. And that way you get a lot of scale. Now, if you put a lot of barriers in place and try to sort of really clean and screen to the nth degree in a way that ends up having very few users actually end up on the list, it doesn't really satisfy your overall objectives. So I think that there is real value to that notion of what we do on the hygiene side to make sure that we're trying to bring the best quality engagement in place. The other thing I was going to say on the other point was that there's the marketers that do best understand the full value of that email address that comes in the door. So the email address comes in the door, there's an engagement, there's a drip program, there's whatever the KPI is. But those email names have value for other things too, including the ones that don't engage. You may take those names and upload them to your social platform to try to retarget these users in a different manner. Maybe that user, for whatever reason, doesn't essentially want to be engaged with on email, but they're more likely to engage with your brand on social. They've raised their hand, they've opted in to receive a message for you, but if they didn't engage, they might be able to engage with you elsewhere. So I think that email address has value beyond that immediate engagement on the email side, and I think the marketers that do best who sort of recognize that full scope of range that the email address can give you in terms of the data it provides.
Absolutely, and I think when we are engaging with partners like this and doing all the, trying to cleanse it out at the very beginning, that economies of scale is so important. And you're absolutely right. And to be able, if you're acquiring something as part of your email acquisition program, and if they are not engaging, doesn't mean they have no value. They do have value. We just have to figure out where and how and what channel they have value on. So there is value to it, but you just want to make sure that you have more quality coming in, but not so many barriers that you literally have only 2 email addresses that you acquired, right?
Yeah, but remember that Gmail doesn't care what other valuation you may put on it. Gmail's looking at one metric: are they opening it or not? And so, in the back of your mind, you have to you have to balance what's Gmail going to do, and they seem to have a sixth sense. I mean, they seem to know when even before you're adding risky sources to your email list, they seem to know you're about to do that, and they block instantly. I mean, co-reg is one technique that a lot of companies, marketers use, but most of them today won't even buy co-reg. Won't buy Gmail addresses from co-reg because, again, Gmail is so quick to just boom, bulk folder or block.
Look, for a decade, we've had our content email business. 80% of our acquisition of those email addresses come from co-reg channels, and we have great Gmail deliverability. All that means is that there is the possibility to be able to make sure, if you run your business properly, that you can tap into a channel of distribution that has incredible scale, as long as you do the hygiene and the quality control properly, and you're disciplined with how you interact with your list, how you scrub your list, how you make sure you have the best quality customer experience on that list. So I think, sure, there are bad situations that come from different channels of distribution, but there is a massive potential supply of good quality names as long as you run the business right. And I think that's an important, relevant point here.
Do you have a follow-up here? Yep. So Jason Notes, Live Intent. So we're talking a lot about customer acquisition, but we're really focused around the email address. But really what we're trying to do is engage with people. So there could be device IDs, cookies, combination with email. So what, if anything, are you doing to actually help people build their graph, refresh their graph? So it's not just about email. Eventually someone's going to opt out. Maybe they're not opening, but yet you can still reach that person across all the activation partners and leverage identity in all different forms to actually engage a customer. So what are you possibly doing to go beyond just the email address and use multiple identifiers to help customers or brands engage with people?
Sure, yeah, and I think that's a great and extremely relevant question, given the sort of the state of the industry. And I think that, this is an area where, as I spoke about earlier, some of the work we did with Shop at Home, pairing an install with an email address, it speaks to sort of the need to work with, in many ways, direct media owners for your acquisition efforts. And why do I say that? To your point, an email address alone oftentimes cannot fulfill the objectives of a marketing program. And I think that, the ability for a media owner to craft a custom program where, perhaps we are, passing an email address with the conversion on a lead form, and so I'm able to run a banner that I can actually drop a user onto your site where they're filling out a lead form. Once you fire a pixel back into me, I can post that user's email address into your database. I mean, that is really sort of the future of where, the industry is going, and where, really marketers need to go in order to be able to engage with consumers across many different platforms. That said, we're also realistic about the fact that oftentimes within large organizations there are silos created between these teams, and in many cases this can sort of inhibit your ability to leverage an email address across channel, as Sujay was speaking about earlier, and really sort of lever up the value of that acquisition by collaborating across teams. And so it's a fight that we are constantly in with a lot of our clients. It's a good one to be in because they're happy with the work they're doing with us, and they're looking for more ways to grow the business. But yeah, absolutely, it's a very, very relevant question, and something that we focus on. At Fluent, we are able to drive acquisition in terms of app installs, toolbar installs, lead forms on client sites, purchases on their websites, data transfer, not only for email, but also for offline marketing activities, as well as call center and SMS. So absolutely, cross-channel marketing is extremely relevant and something that we're focused on.
Ditto.
And I would say, when I was doing this as well at Shop at Home, it was very apparent that having those silos between direct media and the CRM team in general was really hindering our process of doing any kind of an acquisition program. So the sooner those teams could come together to a unified marketing objective made it easier for us to do like an RFP or work with you all to say, these are our requirements, because otherwise everybody just looked and felt the same. So that direct media was very important, because you're right, that email subscriber was literally worth nothing. It's the person that we want, not just the email address.
Yes, I'm like over here low-key loving the different opinions and perspectives, because that's the reason we're having this panel. And I come from a company that I've only been at Domino since April of this year, so I was the first email position they ever had there, so I kind of started from maybe nothing except for an ESP. So we actually work with no vendors at the moment, so this is really good for me to just hear from everyone. But moving in a little bit different of a direction, one of Domino's pain points right now is we're trying to grow our e-commerce list. So we're not super concerned right now with our daily, engaged list that we're sending to on a daily or weekly basis. But so I guess my question is, how do you build email subscribers for different lists or for different target audiences? So if I wanted to grow my e-commerce list, like how would I go about doing that without having to affect my daily engaged list?
I mean, I think that when you own your own asset, and you have users coming to those sites, you're able to ask a number of questions that help identify the user. And so, you can always ask questions that talk about whether or not they're frequent online shoppers, whether they've been shopped on Amazon in the last week. Like, there's a number of ways you can pre-qualify the user to then say, okay, if they show the identifiers or the flags that indicate they're an online shopper and they're in the right demographic group and maybe geo-targeting or anything, then you present the offer to that user. So that is step one, where you basically say, okay, I'm going to try to show this offer to the right user. Step two is what we've also been talking about, which is, okay, let's have feedback from the advertiser to say, okay, these are the names we sent. Did they shop with a certain segments that transacted more or had higher order price, or all of that kind of stuff. So it's on both the front and the back end that you can basically tailor